Hey everyone, it's Saturday. I'm in the office. You know what that means, the Saturday morning hustle. Experimenting with a new camera today, got some new toys, and it reminded me of where the Saturday morning hustle started. Not just the podcast, not just the videos, the social media posts, the things I was doing in the office on Saturdays, actually kind of goofing around, having a little bit of fun that has evolved into this whole series, podcast and other things too, mostly because of you guys telling me what you like, don't like, want to hear more of, etc. So today I'm going to go into what the Saturday Morning Hustle began as, the motivation behind it, the lessons I learned listening to audience feedback, and then how I developed that into what it has become today. So check it out. The full podcast today, iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, the Anchor app, YouTube, anywhere you find great podcasts. So here we go on the mic. Good morning. It's Saturday. I'm in the office. You know what that means. The Saturday Morning Hustle, outworking the competition while they're still sleeping. On the weekend, every weekend, we're earning it. That's right. Appreciate you tuning in to the Saturday Morning Hustle podcast once again. Today, we're going to talk about the history, the process, and the development of the Saturday Morning Hustle podcast. This was not originally started as a podcast. It definitely wasn't envisioned to be what it is today. It was an organic growth and development by paying attention to what you, the audience, enjoyed, didn't enjoy, responded to, didn't respond to, etc., which is the whole key to how you build a business, how you build an audience, how you build a following, how you get people to pay attention to you as an artist, a musician, a civil activist, whatever it is you're doing, you need attention. And attention begins in a perfect world organically, just doing what you do, people paying attention to what it is you're doing. They appreciate it or they don't. They give you feedback. They let you know. Most times we're trying to get positive attention. We're getting people to pay attention to us because we want to convey a message to them. We want them to do something. We want them to participate in something. We want them to partner with us. Occasionally, your attention is negative. This is where you protest. This is where you're trying to fight the system, etc. Either way, you need attention. And attention comes from saying something interesting, being authentic, coming from an authentic place, actually not being selfish or motivated by things like money, but instead because it's part of your lifestyle, it's a passion you have, something that you have real feelings and drive for, and then delivering it in an interesting way. But the real key to continual success is that you adopt, adapt, and adjust along the way. You take the feedback from your audience as much as you can, make the adjustments, typically in things like tactics and delivery, the how it gets to them, but the why and the what you're saying still needs to be coming from you, that authentic voice of the reason that you started what you started, the reason that you're doing what you're doing, the passion behind what you have you need to keep, but understanding the delivery methods, the channels, even the phrasing and the language you use, the timing, etc., all the kind of things that you can adjust that won't affect the core message or idea of what you're doing, you should do and let your audience dictate those things. So I'm going to give you the history of where this program started, where it is now, what I'm thinking about doing with it in the future, and of course, looking for your feedback as well. But you can apply these things, these same things, to anything you're working on, business, hobby, or career. So with that, the Saturday Morning Hustle did literally start out on random Saturdays when I was in the office. So essentially, I do work a lot and I appreciate working. I own my own business. I own my own business, be clear with that. So going in on a Saturday isn't necessarily as cumbersome as for some people who work a 9 to 5, working for the man who don't always want to go in and put in extra work for someone who doesn't appreciate them. When you're the boss, you get to appreciate that extra work you do. So I would go into to the office on Saturdays because I got more done from about 8 to noon on a Saturday than I did on any other day from 8 to probably 1 to 2 p.m. because I was not being interrupted. There were no phone calls, no emails, no real expectation from my clients, employees, vendors, etc. No one was really expecting work out of me on a Saturday morning, so I got a lot of stuff done. A lot of the stuff that takes long chunks of time isn't typically very glamorous, but it has to be done. The sort of the work before the work, building on your assets, organizing, putting things in place, getting the next week structured so that it went as smoothly as possible, being prepared, doing research, etc. That's what I was doing on Saturdays. Some Saturdays, it was in the office, head down, grinding, never looked up. Other Saturdays, a little bit more curious about what's happening in the world, sometimes rushed because I wanted to go and do something, watch college football or go have a nice lunch that day. Some Saturdays really not wanting to get out of bed at all, not motivated, but trying to remember of what it is I'm doing and the fact that I had passion for it because it was my own business. And so sort of willing myself into it. And eventually it became a habit. It became a very productive habit, so I continued with it. The social media posts started off a little bit of being playful, a little bit of trying to not actually work, trying to distract myself from work, and a little bit of experimentation. And you'll hear this idea a lot as we talk about this conversation. Experimentation on how I could connect with people. I was very curious if other people were similar to me, other entrepreneurs, other hustlers, grinders, people who were really telling people that they were going hard 24/7, 365. Well, here's your chance to prove if you're in the office, if you're up working at home, if you're putting the extra hours in, if you're really going as hard as you say. So I started making social media posts, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Hey, I'm in the office. What are you guys doing? Here's what I'm working on today. And really began actually taking pictures of my coffee, pictures of donuts. Remember back when when we used to take pictures of our food all the time? Was the most interesting on Instagram at that time. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. So things like that, just trying to experiment in engagement, see if anyone was paying attention to me, see if I could learn anything from what anyone else was doing. So that started off social media post, a couple of photos that came with it, a little bit of text, and then along came the idea, especially at about that same time when I was really trying to engage on Instagram, of course, composing some photos, doing something interesting, being more intentional than just making something up when I was in the office on the fly. So the Saturday morning hustle went from a 5 minutes of my Saturday to a 10, 15, 20-minute version of my Saturday, trying to do something that was actually engaging, was intentional, and it could be measured in as far as how people were reacting to it. So that's how we started doing short little bits, video clips, some more extensive postings, more depth, asking questions, putting some more graphics along with the presentation as well. So that was the second iteration. Again, it was an experimentation. It wasn't a huge investment of time, zero investment of money. And I got a little bit of feedback, started getting feedback from people who were paying attention on Saturdays. So then along came the idea for a podcast. That same amount of time, this is now about 3 years ago. Podcasts were very popular again. I was doing podcasts for my business and I was doing podcasts for clients. And so I had the equipment, I had the ability, I had an understanding of podcast, but I didn't want to do the same podcast everyone else was doing. So I started using an app on the phone, smartphone app called Anchor. It's still on Anchor. Still my home base for the Saturday Morning Hustle is Anchor. Shout out to Anchor. They're doing a great job. I think they're a great platform, constantly paying attention to their audience as well. I think they do a really good job and helping people monetize their podcast now, which is very important. So at that time, the interesting thing about Anchor was, much like how Twitter was microblogging, how many characters you could use on making posts on Twitter was one of the most interesting aspects of Twitter. Anchor was a 5-minute podcast using the phone. So pick up the phone, talk for 5 minutes, upload it. You could get a theme song, you could get sound effects, you could get a little bit of bells and whistles, and you hit one button and off it went and connected to iTunes and a couple of other accounts, and there you go. But it was 5 minutes, which made it very interesting in that you couldn't go on and on like I am now. I'm well more than 5 minutes, almost 10 minutes into this conversation today, although I'm being intentional with that. Don't think I'm wasting your time. But it forced you to get right to the point. It forced you to be very specific. And I started off very casually talking about hustle and grind, getting up on the weekends, coffee and donuts, just some ideas like this as to way to motivate people. I'm generally a relatively positive person. I'm generally upbeat and extroverted. So the idea of trying to motivate other people, other entrepreneurs, small business owners, people in the startup game, etc., trying to connect with them as well, not just motivating them, but connect with them. Sort of a we're all in the same boat, we're all in the same situation together type idea, because we could create commonality, we could create community, then we could relate to each other, we could get into relationships, maybe a business relationship, or we could at least be helpful to each other. So that's where the podcast came from initially. The idea that I could easily do a 5-minute podcast on Anchor because the app was so easy to use. Insert that along with the social media post I was already doing as well, and we're off to the races. So that's how the podcast component became part of the Saturday Morning Hustle media post. But I started getting feedback now at that point. Definitely a lot of people talking about motivation and the idea of not wanting to get out of bed on a Saturday, but knowing there are other people in the world, not just me, but plenty of other people that were out on Saturdays, that were talking about putting the hustle and grind in, and motivating people to get out of bed and go do the thing that we're going to do, whether it was work on their business, work on their side hustle, or just go to the gym and work out and feel healthier, something that would motivate them in that way. So it's getting positive feedback about the motivation aspect of the Saturday Morning Hustle moved me to continue to try to improve, try to connect, try to do a better job of communicating these ideas. So the 5-minute podcast wasn't very far past being superficial in you got to hustle, you got to grind, you got to do what you got to do, you got to put the hours in, 10,000 hours to be an expert, all those kind of concepts. But then eventually podcast formats on Anchor expanded past 5 minutes, and I started adding the video component. And originally it was just video from the cell phone, literally selfie style, pick up the cell phone, the smartphone, walking through the office space, walking through the gallery when we were at 1219 Creative at the time, back then when that was happening. Showing people what we were doing in this space because it was created, it was different. So I wanted to inspire people to do that for themselves, for their office spaces as well. Letting people know I was really there on a Saturday, that I wasn't making it up, etc. I was being authentic with him, being honest and authentic with him as well. And putting a face with the voice and moving pictures, etc., versus still pictures, just trying to do a better job of connecting because people were telling me that the message of get up, get to work, outwork your competition while they're still sleeping was resonating. So the expansion of the Saturday Morning Hustle videos, along with a social media post, along with a longer format in the podcast itself, was being positively received. It was motivated by that positive feedback. And this is where I started to get a lot of feedback from what you would call the real world, IRL, right, in real life. People I knew were sending me notes, letting me know that they were checking out the podcast. They liked some things I said. They were using it themselves, sharing it with other people. Fantastic. Thank you. Appreciate it. I always appreciate the feedback. Absolutely appreciate positive feedback. We'll take negative feedback too. If you think that I'm wrong on a topic, that I've missed a subject, or you want to hear something different, for sure, let me know. That's what this is all about. This is the relationship that we're building here on the podcast and the social media post. Excuse me. But I also got some really inspirational to me feedback from real world people. A few people I didn't know, a few people that I did know, but relatively casually, not people that I had deep relationship with, that were telling me that by happenstance, by chance, a message I put out, the fact that I was in the office, the fact that I was talking about hustle, the fact that I was telling people that if you have an idea, if you have a dream, if you're going to start a business, you can do it. Only got to be willing to put in the work, attitude, effort, all the things that I talk about on this podcast on the regular. Was those messages were connecting, and people were telling me in real life at social events and other places that I would run into them that the Saturday Morning Hustle not only was something they enjoyed, it was good for them, but in a couple of instances helped people through problem times where they were feeling very negative about themselves, very down, very low, thinking that they weren't in the right place. And a simple, hey, I did it, you can do it, or a simple motivational conversation, the Saturday Morning Hustle, helped them get over that hump and do things that they wanted to do with themselves and with their life in a better, different way. Fantastic. Now my motivation is way up and I am going all the way in on we're going to do this. We're going to go full blast. I'm going to be better at it. This is where I start investing time and effort, a little bit of money in a better camera, a better setup, tripod, making my content more interesting, very much supported by the social media post, how to find the podcast, deeper information, all the kind of things that would go into more of a developed program because the experiment was working, because people were connecting and the message was resonating with them, and it was having positive impact on people because people were letting me know that it was happening. It wasn't just me guessing. So I had the proof I needed. So now I invested time, money, effort into doing it for real. Now the Saturday Morning Hustle has morphed into almost its own brand. It's a sub-brand of myself, that's for sure. And my 9-to-5 business, my Monday through Friday, if you will, because we do marketing and video production and digital channel like this. We do all these things as well. But that's where the swag come from. We got the shirts, the t-shirts, the hats, really following through on the hashtags. We got more coming. We got the hashtag coffee and donuts. We've got the hashtag entrepreneur AF. We're really developing depth in the brand and the idea because we have audience feedback, because we have audience buy-in, because we have ongoing relationships with you guys on the podcast, on the social media channels, and in real life. So other business professionals that I work with on a regular basis have even pulled me aside too and telling me that the Saturday Morning Hustle should be even more part of my own personal brand and that they see value in it in a different way than I do, which is fantastic feedback. I appreciate that feedback and I'm trying to incorporate it for sure, along with the vision that I have as well. But that's not the most important part. What's most important is the part that you are still listening to this podcast. The idea that I can motivate you, that I connect with you, we can create a relationship through digital media this way in a simple process. I'm still trying to keep the Saturday Morning Hustle as simple as possible, but as effective as possible, reach as many people as possible, be as positive as possible, be as actually tactical too, giving you information that you can utilize, not just to giving you some raw, you can do it kind of stuff, but keeping you positive as well. That is where something I feel can be effective for people. So the motivational piece, the educational piece, the informational piece comes through if you're entertained, if I've captured your attention, if I have put you in my audience, which is where we started. You have to start with attention. You have to do something that's different than everyone else, differentiation. We've talked about this on this podcast before. Talked about it a lot on my business podcast, the Golden Group Neo Marketing Podcast for sure. Neo Marketing Podcast, we hit on differentiation a lot. One of my favorite words. How you win successful in business is setting yourself apart. Not being better, but being different. Differentiation. But differentiation, doing something interesting, being authentic, you get some of the attention. Now you've created audience. That's where we started. That's where we end up. Where we started originally in an organic, will this work, will it not kind of place. Allow myself to let the audience themselves, let the opportunities present themselves, follow them along. That's how successful items get made. That's how successful podcasts gets made, how successful businesses happen, how people develop their own careers, etc. So these are the lessons I hope you can learn today on the Neo Marketing Podcast. Start with being authentic. Do something you have passion for. Start simple, but just start. Don't wait for perfect. Just get started. Let it build organically. Look for try to grab people's attention, create an audience, then create a relationship with them where the feedback can drive you to the next aspect in the next development of your audience. That creates a cycle of good, a cycle of positive, it moves things in the right way. Pay attention, listen as much as you speak. Put that feedback into it. Look for technology changes. Look for delivery changes. Look for tactics. Look for timing. Look for all the things that you can adjust without that doesn't take away or dilute from your core message or the core item that you're trying to achieve. Of course, your timing will depend on what your goals are, what your motivation is, the need versus the want, all those things. And you can build a self-brand. You can build an actual brand, a startup, a business, side hustle, real business, etc. This all the way goes to the corporate level. You could take these same ideas and experiment with your communication from your corporate entity, from your business, or a nonprofit organization or anything else, a sports team even. Experiment with communication, build audience, listen to that audience, continue that relationship. It's that simple to say. It's a lot more hard to do and a lot more work in the process. I'm years into this process. Not Joe Rogan yet. Don't have millions of followers. Don't have millions of downloads. But I have enough, and I have enough positive feedback from the people that do give me feedback. And I wish you would too. I hope you will. Subscribe, leave a review, all that good stuff. Get the thumbs up, the hearts, the stars, all that good stuff. I'd appreciate it. And I'll continue to make potential profit, potential income, potential motivation, potential relationships with you each and every Saturday here on the Saturday Morning Hustle. So until next week, you guys be good, stay motivated, grab yourself a coffee, grab yourself a donut, get in the office, get some work done. Good luck. Boom. There we go. Saturday Morning Hustle done. Appreciate you guys being behind the scenes once again here on YouTube. And like I said, here on the podcast and on the intro, this is an organic process. So please leave me some feedback, leave me some information below. Let me know what you think, what you like to hear, topics, ideas, etc. Hit that subscribe button, leave a review. Appreciate it. Tell a friend, send them a link, share it on social media, however you got to do it. And I'll see you next Saturday.